Thank
I'm
you.
going to jump in anyway, even though you said I already answered this question. Um, I always admire about Paige, and I reflect on this, and that's an opportunity of learning is her clarity and directness in verbal communication. Like just now, how she answered your question, I'll probably talk around in circles for 5 minutes, and she's kind of very clear and very direct in a way that I pay attention to, and reflect on how I can achieve some of that. And another aspect of her communication that I admire, and I don't try to emulate because it just isn't me, is when I see her working with, she works with a lot of volunteers, and she brings such genuine enthusiasm, um, really celebrating them with this absolutely authentic passion that I don't think is in my wheelhouse of emotional sharing. Um, I I celebrate people, but I just can't do it that way. But I've learned from so I have to. So I want to say that you can admire things about people and learn from it, even if you don't emulate it. So instead of trying to
Mm.
put things pages away and going woohoo, it's down here when I do. Um, I find other ways to express that support, encouragement, and value of people. It might be more wordy or more pastry-y. I celebrate people with pastries a lot and socks.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's sort of the same goal. And I recognize that mimicking Page isn't the right way to achieve it, but I can still achieve it through my own by being myself. I think that's
Mm.
that maybe we can all reflect on.
No, yeah, I think it's really nice that we're having both of you guys on today because I think it could show our viewers that you don't have to be one single
Yeah.
way to be a museum educator or just to enter museum work in the first place. You guys are so similar yet different in your own ways. And I think that really does make the community of people in museum work special.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, what do you wish that more people understood about what museum educators actually do?
Hmm. I think it's more that I wish they recognized us a little bit more. When I tell people that I work at an art museum, they immediately assume that I am a curator or that I work in curatorial. And I think they
Mhm.
fail to recognize that there are so many other departments that are working together to bring the museum to life. And so I think that acknowledgement that there are educators who are activating the art, who are interpreting art, identifying program opportunities to make it relevant, engaging for audiences of all ages. Um, just giving that little nod that there are museum educators who are working to serve you.
Yeah, that's very true. I would guess that most people, when they think of museum education, they imagine a tour where someone's leading them from gallery to gallery and telling them this and telling them that, and it might be really interesting or it might not be. And I don't want people to have that as the one image of what museum education is. Certainly, a gallery tour where people are telling you about interesting background, biography, ways of looking at art is really exciting, but it's not for everyone, and it's not the only thing that is museum education. As Paige was saying, it's for all ages, for people from all backgrounds with different interests, and we really try to not make it a lecture from one point of view, but really looking for ways to bring people and their perspectives in. So, as I think I said earlier, our tours are really they're based on dialogue and shared inquiry, asking questions together, sharing what people see in the works and seeing through other people's eyes.
Yeah.
So another aspect that is different from I think what people really anticipate they're going to find in museum education.
Yeah, I have to ask because I'm curious. Has there ever been a audience reaction that really stood out to either of you guys?
Hmm. I work with a lot of early learning audiences, so 2 to 5. So really anything they say really surprises me. You will look at an artwork over and over and over again and think that you have it memorized to a T, that you see all the different aspects, you understand the interpretation. And then a 3-year-old will see this artwork and see something so wildly different that just blows your mind to the realm of possibilities of imagination. Um, so it's really
Um,
fun to work with that audience, really any audience, and just see how someone else's interpretation can inform you to rethink yours.
That's a
yeah.
great response. And my response is sort of similar, except it's with college students in that Um, there's a lot of paintings I love to look at with classes because they're so rich. and they have so many themes that are relevant to different areas of study. And so I've looked at them a lot, and I've led people through a lot of discovery in them, and I've heard a lot of answers, and I know what people are going to say. And then someone will show you something that you've just never seen in a painting. It's a connection or a relationship or some aspect that in all the times you've spent looking at it, you've never seen. So that's always really exciting, is to continue to learn and discover, and to realize, always be reminded that you don't know everything you think you might know.
Yeah. No, that's very neat that you guys kind of had the same response despite the very different age groups that
Yeah.
you guys deal
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
So you can
And
learn
then
from
what would
anyone.
you say? Yeah, you
I'm
continue,
just saying, like,
Chelsea.
it shows you can learn from anyone, because I like how you guys both like mentioned younger kids, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like college kids. You're never
Hmm.
too old to like keep learning.
Mhm.
And then, what would you say would be some essential skills or qualities that you need to possess as a museum educator?
I think when working with people, which is primarily what a museum educator does, it's important to be flexible, to be responsive, to be able to adapt your plans to best fit the needs and interest of the group that you are serving. I think it's essential that you are a people person. Everything we do is for our audiences. And so, really being tapped into who your audience is, what your viewership is interested in, is really important.
Yeah, those are all on my list of skills. Um, Collaboration and flexibility,
Hmm.
being able to deal with the unexpected, which is always happening. No matter, we're really good planners. We're really good planners, but the unexpected is going to happen, and being able to improvise and change, um, and support. Like, we have a lot of volunteers that will work with docents giving tours and encourage them to. Um, Work through the challenges of the unexpected, right? Managing that whole team. Those are all important things. And I realize, as Paige was saying, that those are all sort of front of house, that's during the program skills. There's also these back of house skills where you're doing the labor of writing the emails and managing the budget. So there's also going to be, your ability to be organized and to communicate effectively and regularly and promptly back and forth across departments, because we're working with finance, we're working with the registration, we're working with the development, with the registrars, with the director, with security, right? Anytime we're front of house doing a program, it's based on all this background work that you've done. So the ability to communicate both written and verbal. And I want to say something about verbal communication too, because that's a big one for a lot of people, public speaking. Um, uh, and always maintaining your respect for the people you're working with, even when you're stressed. Like, so important to recognize people's humanity, even at times when you feel crushed by the stress of things going wrong or something. But I did want to say about public speaking, that you, in museum education and on most positions, you probably end up doing a lot of public speaking, even though you're not a public speaker, even though you were all through high school, myself, afraid of public speaking, into college, terrified of public speaking. Like, not a skill I had, not a skill I learned. Paige is nodding her head. Um, but I want you, sort of your high school students who are like, I would never stand up in front of an audience and talk, to realize it's a skill you acquire over time through necessity. You don't have to, be a good public speaker before you start to think of this career. You just have to be willing to challenge yourself and face that. Because for so many people, it is something that makes them, I think, avoid a lot of things. Um, because I think, Chelsea and Yashvin, perhaps you've always been confident with public speaking, but maybe you felt it challenged. But I think a lot of people feel that challenge.
No, I have to say it's definitely a challenge. I think through this podcasts that we've been doing, I've grown to become more comfortable with speaking to you guys. But in front of a large audience, I it's completely different. It's so nerve-wracking. I can hear my heart in my ears. It's definitely a mess, but I always think that I'm talking with a shaky
Hmm.
voice whenever I'm in a large audience, but I think it's more or less me hearing the blood rush in my ears and think that I'm shaky. So honestly, I think one of the best things for those of you who are watching who want to improve your public speaking skills is truly, I think it's not the best advice, but one of the things I like to remember is that some of these people you'll never see again. And because you're never going to see them again, you shouldn't care too much about how you'd be perceived by them in that aspect. Like, yeah, you're going to present yourself amazingly, and people are going to have their thoughts, but it's not like you're going to know what they're thinking at the end of the day.
Yeah. Um, and you only get comfortable through practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally hid in the back of the classroom when I was a little kid, so I wouldn't have to stand up and do like at home or whatever. And we're all growing through life, and so I think it's so important to recognize that the things that are obstacles for you now are things you have a lifetime to work through. Um, and so, yeah, and we all have our own tricks. I love your trick yesterday to sort of put yourself in that mental frame where you feel a little less stress around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys for sharing. I think that's definitely something that people may not realize if they were to enter into the field of museum education, like the value of public speaking, but also the side of compassion and just actually actively listening. And I don't know if you guys are aware of the 7 habits, but it's something we learn in school, like seek first to understand, then to be
Mm,
understood.
Mhm.
Uh, just little
Mhm.
habits that I think really do apply to work like museum education at the end of the day.
definitely.
Yeah.
So on the topic of public speaking, do you have any other advice that you would give to high school or even college students who are curious about working in museums?
Yeah. Um, well, I'd say the first thing is to spend time in museums, just like see what's going on. What does an exhibition look like? What do the different exhibitions look like? One of the things I always experienced when I went to museums before being a professional was like you walked in and you saw the exhibition and it was this complete thing and you never imagined all the work that went into it. But when you start to think about people physically hanging works on the wall, you realize there's choices and decisions. And so just spend time in museums and start to step back from your experience and think about what you see and ask questions. Um, and the same thing in programs, I would say, so go to museums and experience programs to see like what feels right to you, what appeals to you. So just that experience as like a user. Um, there aren't a lot of, I would say, volunteer opportunities. Maybe not at the Harn because we're not really strong on volunteer opportunities, but there's great museums around Gainesville, really small ones. The Matheson History Museum, the Cotton Club Museum and Cultural Center, the A. Quinn Jones Museum or Cultural Center, um, the Cade Museum. What else, Paige? There's the Museum of Theater, which is a really quirky one, which is privately run, but totally it's an opportunity to see what another side of museums. So I would say try and find volunteer opportunities, get to know people, and ask them about what they do. And if you can't work in a museum, I'd say even try and interview a museum employee, ask them about their work, what the two of you are doing today. Um, make contact with someone and say, hey, could I ask you questions about your job and learn about it? That would be a huge way to get insights into um, what it's like behind the scenes of a museum.
Do you agree with that, Paige, or do you have any
I
other
definitely agree.
advice? Yeah. And then, other than volunteering and, like you said, kind of speaking to professionals as yourself, do you guys have any recommendations in terms of classes or activities that people could maybe partake in to see if museum education is the right fit for them?
Hmm.
I think that, I mean, for at UF, I think there's actually a undergraduate museum studies certificate. That's a couple of
Oh.
classes. Don't quote me on that. Look it up in the catalog. So there's things like that. Otherwise, it's mostly not happening till the graduate level. Um, so in terms of, I mean, I think the real trick, or not the real trick, but the real important thing in your college years is to look for internship opportunities, college years as possible, and also to find your field of study, whether it's art museums, science museums, history, that kind of thing, and really build that foundation. Um, if you look at, another thing I would suggest doing is looking at job opportunities. You're not ready to apply for a job, but what do the jobs say they want in terms of experience? What do they say they want in terms of
Mm.
academic background or
Mm,
course of study?
Mhm.
Um, it can be a little overwhelming to look at those, but I think valuable so you can start thinking for yourself, how am I going to build that skill, or how am I going to talk about this, when it comes to when I apply for this job in 3 years from now. Um, so I'd say that would be a really good way to start steering your thoughts is getting online and just hunting around for museum jobs, museum education jobs.
I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree. I think that's a recommendation that not only people interested in museum education could take, but also people in other fields like me and Chelsea who want to go into where we want to work into, just seeing what qualifications are desired and trying to apply that and like grow on that before we get there.
Yeah, and at your level, I mean, you're already developing such great skills. You're looking towards graduation. You may have done a lot of those things, but you might not have thought that you've done them. So a lot of things are to like, reflect on how do I demonstrate the things I've done that I have got leadership experience. Oh, well, I've never been a leader of a X, Y, or Z, but I've demonstrated leadership
Yeah.
through this club. So it's a great opportunity to start digesting that now.
Yeah.
Especially since like at least in high school, I feel like a lot of kids, after their school at 3 p.m. and maybe after school jobs and homework, they have like a little time to themselves to like kind of explore the area and like really get to know your interests because at the end of the day, it's really important that your career is something that you enjoy doing so it doesn't feel like work or so it doesn't end up something you dread. And I'm guessing that both of you guys like love your jobs and you love what you're doing since you've done it for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And neither one of us, as we've discussed, intended in high school to be in this job. And I think it's totally cool for high schoolers today, even though there's so much pressure to know what you're going to do, to know that you're going to change. Um, UF majors change, they change their majors 3, 4 times. I don't know how many times you might have changed your majors, but on average, they come into UF knowing they're going to study pre-law or they're going to study pre-med, and then they realize that's actually not my passion. It was an easy answer to give all those years when people kept asking me every time, "You've grown so much. What are you going to do with your life?" That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but the world opens up when you're in college, and it's okay to know that you thought about museum studies at this point in high school, but you're actually interested in something else, or vice versa. But I think
Mhm.
it's so important what you're doing right now, through Now What and all your work, is just laying it out in front of people, planting seeds. Right, you're planting seeds that they don't have to grow right now, but they'll be there in the future when your high school students today are figuring out their careers.
So speaking of which, is there something you wish you had known before starting your careers in at Harn?
So much email. There's a
Yeah,
lot of email.
yeah, I think the administrative side of working at art museum, when you think about it, you think you're going to be in the galleries. You're constantly going to be with your visitors, making art, talking about art, looking at art together. And that is a good chunk of the position, but a lot of it is being behind a desk, doing emails, coming up with budgets, making sure that you're on track with your spending goals, writing grants. Um, Lots of organizing, lots of admin duties, which are great and important, but maybe not as exciting as getting to make art with 3 and 5 year olds.
Yeah, that's so true. And the other thing that, we should put our cards on the tables, said the magician. Um, the other thing is it's really important to know that nonprofits are never going to compete in terms of salary with the business world
Yeah.
or with the medical professions or the legal professions, right? So we love our work. I love my work. It's a lot of my life is spent at work, so I do want to love it. I would say I'm underpaid. I would say that most people in any art museum would say that they're underpaid. We're in a nonprofit. and that it just means you're never going to be able to keep up. So go in with your eyes open.
Yeah.
Um, when you start working, start saving. Thinking about your future. It's hard to at the beginning, but also just have that eye on reality of life is a big long trip, and this is a step you're taking that has certain limitations and opportunities. And salary is not one of the strong points.
Yeah, and I think this is another good
Mhm.
reason to be looking at the job postings and seeing what the industry is like, not only for the qualifications and the level of experience, but also what they're advertising the salary to be so that you can be best prepared and understand financially what you will be getting yourself into.
That's such a great point. Thanks, Paige.
Right, yeah.
No, yeah, I appreciate both of your guys' perspective on that because I think it's very easy to walk into just like any job in general, thinking about it in rose tinted glasses and not actually seeing it for what it is. And I think that's a really good piece of advice that people should be more aware of rather than just going into it blindly because there are more sides than what you enjoy to do. Yeah. And then I wanted to ask what drew you guys into an art museum? Like what would draw someone into a science museum or a history museum?
Yeah, I think it's personal interest. I grew up wanting to be an
Mhm.
artist, and that wasn't quite achievable for
Mhm.
me, but I knew I still wanted to work in the arts. So, an art museum was the next best thing, and it's been very rewarding. So, I think in this position, we get to bring a lot of our own interests and our own skill sets. And then, of course, we grow for the needs and the qualifications for the position. But choosing the museum is kind of just choosing what your hobbies and interests and passions are.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true in museum education. Most jobs in the museum, there's a couple of jobs in the museum. So if you're art museum, if you love art, you'll be in an art museum. Maybe the development officer comes from a different background,
Yeah.
and the development officer is the person who does fundraising for the museum, and they may or may not have an art background or particular art focus, and they learn that through the job. Otherwise, I would say most of us start with the art passion and then connect that to the museum.
Hmm.
So what does a typical day look like in your current role? And what would you consider the perfect workday?
Hmm.
Well, the nice thing about the job, I think, is that there's not like the typical workday doesn't happen very often. Every day is different. There are certain meetings that fall in your calendar and certain deadlines, but a lot of different responsibilities, new projects all the time. For me, you know, a good day is when there's not a lot of meetings that are just kind of informational. A meeting that's productive and you're actually accomplishing something is one thing. Sometimes in an organization of any kind, not just a museum or an art museum, um, meetings get out of hand, and that feels like a lost day of potential productivity, of connecting with people, of moving projects forward. So my perfect day is like come in the office, open my coffee thermos, get settled and catch up on a little email, dig into a project for a little bit, go to one meeting where we really have a meeting of minds and brainstorm something. Paige and I had this meeting, was it this past Monday? We met with a colleague in curatorial, and there was a little problem like, how are we going to do this? And together in 40 minutes, we're like, great idea came out of it. And we're moving forward on that now. So that was a wonderful part of that day. It's just sort of like little problem, exciting outcome. Um, and then, it's got to include some time in the gallery where you see an amazing thing happen. Maybe it's a kid just jumping up and down with joy about, something they've seen in an artwork, or people just really immersing themselves in work or having a conversation around art. Those are parts of my perfect day.
I agree. Mine is very similar. Coming in, checking my email, feeling really organized, having zero unread emails in my inbox. So satisfying. And then maybe heading out to do an outreach program at an early learning site, getting to bring a piece of the museum to spaces who may not have access to coming physically to the museum, looking at, talking about, and making art together. And then coming back, going down into our classroom and prepping, making art for another upcoming program. So, really like hands on opportunities, engagement. That's a perfect day for me.
That sounds lovely. And is there, other than a perfect day, has there ever been a moment in your guys' career that really stuck with you in your career thus far?
One particular moment.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I think for me, it's when we're doing outreach and we're sharing aspects of the museum and getting folks really excited about potentially coming to visit one day, and then being able to see that student or that family actually come to the museum and see these works of art that we have been studying as digital reproductions of use with the projector, and then them having that aha moment of seeing it in person. Because it's one thing to see an artwork from a picture, and it's another thing to see it in person, to see the scale, to see the artist's touch, with their brushstrokes or the way in which they formed the sculpture or vessel. So knowing that you did have an impact, that you did inspire that visitor to come to a space that maybe they wouldn't have because they didn't feel like it was relevant to them, that they didn't belong here, that it wasn't open to them. That's really rewarding and really meaningful.
Yeah. Um, this is super particular, but I think that's what you're asking. Is I did this one program where we collaborated with a North Carolina ceramics organization that was working with a South African ceramicist, Jabu Nala, whose work we had in our collection. And so this woman came from South Africa to North Carolina, and then we were able to bring her down to Gainesville, and we had her adjacent to the gallery where her work was on view and her mother's work was on view from our
Oh,
collection.
wow.
And we had her with clay. She works on the floor, so she was sitting on the floor creating. We had all these people from Gainesville gathered around for 1, 2, 3 hours watching her create with a sense of joy and sharing. Um, so for me, that was really exciting to see our art and collection brought to life by an artist um, who was excited to connect with people and people who were just um, enthralled to connect this object behind, in a case of the museum to actual sort of the physical making of it. So loved that program, and that was one that I was really proud of having worked on.
What a cool
Yeah.
story.
So, what motivated both of you to move into a leadership position, such as directing education or managing community interpretation?
Yeah, well, I think probably almost anyone would say taking on new challenges and responsibilities. And I think there's a lot of truth in that because um, you want to be doing new things at work. Otherwise, it can be very dull and stifling that you feel you're doing the same thing all the time. So one way to achieve that is by creating new programs. Another way is to assume new responsibilities and leadership. So that was all true for me. But one of the things that I really discovered that was I loved about leadership is the opportunity to help people that I supervised grow in their positions. So, like, here's your job, but what else do you want to learn? How do you want to grow? What new skills do you want? Where are you headed? And it's so bittersweet. I've had colleagues who I was able to support in their growth who then grew too big for here and they went on to other jobs elsewhere. So huge success for them personally, huge loss for me, but a real joy in terms of leadership because you want people to love the work they're doing enough to grow in it and have new opportunities.
Hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
What about you, Paige?
Yeah, I think wanting to be challenged, wanting to find new opportunities to grow within the position, um, very much motivated me.
Yeah, I think that's really nice to hear because I saw the saying one time that said if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Mm,
And I think I think that kind of applies for you guys. Like you guys just want to challenge yourself and continue moving up and just develop and hone your skills and even learn new skills. And I think that's very impressive no matter like the given amount of time. Like you guys have been in this field for so long, but you're constantly hoping to grow more.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
that's amazing.
Hmm. I really like that
And
phrase.
then if sorry, keep
I
going,
said I really
Chelsea.
like that phrase you said. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you guys had a dream project without any budget or and then like a certain time or a certain space, what would your dream project be?
Hmm.
I'll let Paige start this one off.
Dream project. I don't know. There's some that are realistic, like expanding our outreach program to be able to serve every single daycare or early learning center here in Gainesville. But then there's others that are maybe not so realistic, like being able to have rescue animals in the museum and be part rescue facility, but also museum. And there's some way that it combines like my two passions and two interests, and it all works out. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that sounds great.
You know what? Never say never. I feel like you can actually get
yeah.
there one day. Maybe a little outdoor exhibition,
Hmm.
something different. It sounds very, I would love to be
Yeah.
there if that ever happens.
Yeah.
And what about
So
you?
I would love for us to crack that nut about being able to do more teen specific programs. That would be something to focus on. Also, I mentioned earlier that we're the largest art museum in the area. Um, I would love for us to be able to serve Alachua County more broadly, rural Alachua County, to support that. We work with some great artists who are really committed to engaging um, outside of Gainesville. East Stanley Richardson with his Art
Hmm.
Speaks Poetry project, and I would love to be able to like be more responsive to that drive to like bring more people from further away or to reach them. Um, so those are areas I would love to work in. Um, I also have this vision, like I go to a lot of meetings of different organizations around town. And I feel like you should always be thinking about the art museum. You're trying to do this program, think about the art museum because we have ways of connecting with what you're doing, whether you're focused on housing or crime or job training. I feel like we have ways to plug into that and support it. And so I would like us. So Paige does these incredible outreach programs to schools and after-school programs where she brings art experiences to them. But I also want us to be able to achieve that outreach to organizations. So we're
Yeah.
kind of like they're always thinking of, oh, we should involve the art museum because they can present art in ways that our constituents can derive inspiration from, pleasure from, insight from. So I would love for us to kind of one day be everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's also a beautiful project. I think that would be amazing to see. And also, it's very interesting that you mentioned how you have a way of connecting with a lot of organizations. I've never thought about it that way and didn't think that was a possibility. But now that you say it and like reflecting back on the conversations we had, I think it's very possible.
No, definitely. And I hope these like one day these like projects like go from like dream to becoming an actual reality one day in like in whatever form it like ends up taking.
Thank you for that wish. Love it.
Mhm.
So, have you ever hit a crossroads where you considered switching careers, and what made you say now what in that moment?
Hmm. I have not.
No. Um, I I started studying art history maybe my junior year in college, and then I went to grad school in art history. Then I took a job at UF teaching art history at the undergraduate and graduate level. So I was an art historian, meant research and teaching art history and being part of an art history department. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. Enjoyed working with students in that way, but I hated the grading. And um, when this position opened up at the museum, that was a big change to jump from an academic, I'm a professor of art history position to I'm a museum educator. Um, but I felt like it was going to be a better fit for me and my personal preferences and the way I wanted to work. So it can be a leap of faith, right? You don't know. You don't know if something's going to work for you. It's easier to do when you're younger, harder to do when you're older. I was young enough that it was easier to do. Um, but yeah, that changing your career path can be very painful. You need friends and family to support you, who believe in you, because when you're leaving something and trying something new, you really don't know if you're going to fall flat on your face. Um, so it kind of takes personal tolerance, risk tolerance, and pain tolerance sometimes. It can be
Yeah.
hard.
Mm. Oh, yeah, we always like to say on these podcasts that it's better late than never to always change and like really take that courage to do what's right for you rather than be afraid about the time you lost in the process.
That's really good, and I appreciate you saying that because I was a little stuck in what I was just saying, but you're also pointing out like, um, don't let yourself get stuck in something that you're not happy in.
Yeah.
That's a really important
Mm.
part of that is like, just because it's a little scary and it's a risk, you know you're unhappy now. It's better to take a risk, a well considered one, right? Where you've been well informed, where you've listened to all your now what podcasts. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now, as we reach the end of our podcast, we would love to do something a bit more abstract with you guys and kind of build a bouquet where, every flower has a thorn. And we wanted you guys to share a thorn, a challenge that you faced in your career thus far.
Hmm.
mhm. um, yeah, challenge for us.
Yeah.
Challenges every day, really,
Yeah.
but a painful one that you're kind of like that stands out. Um,
I think for
well,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say COVID.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Yep. How to still be
And
relevant as a museum educator when you don't have access to the museum and to your art objects, and how can you connect, with folks? That was really, really difficult.
yeah, we
Yeah.
lost some staff at that time. It was really just Paige and me for a while, um, and it was online, and it was so hard to figure out what our job was and how to do it and how to keep people feeling engaged when
Mhm.
we were all getting sick of being on Zoom or some other video format. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
Mm.
It was a challenge, but I think
Wow.
it also really pushed us to think outside of the box and to kind of redefine our roles and how we can go about creating programs and creating hands-on opportunities. I never want to go back to that time, but I think it
Yeah.
really was a good obstacle to make us think more about what we do and how we can do it.
Oh yeah, I can imagine like the evolution of art museums because of COVID. I didn't even that was a challenge that I didn't expect to hear
Yeah.
about
Mm,
today, but like hearing it, it does make sense. It's definitely a huge barrier that you guys encountered.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then, as we know, every bouquet with its thorns, it guards a beautiful flower. What are some of the roses that bloomed in your guys' career and like the happy moments?
Yeah, well, I would say we've alluded to a lot of them. Watching each other, staff members grow in their positions and take on new challenges is so exciting. Um, and then the huge pleasures of just so the other. We recently opened an exhibition on Ghanaian fashion, and I finished up the scavenger hunt, which is not usually my job, but for various reasons it fell on my court. So I did the scavenger hunt, worked with the curator on it a little bit, finished it. I put it in the gallery, and it was that day, I think. Yes, that day I saw maybe 3 or 4 kids take this little scavenger hunt and start doing it. And one little girl, I saw her looking and find, she had to look at her piece of paper, find this, look at the artwork, see where in the artwork she could see it, and she saw it and she jumped up and down with such joy. And
Oh.
so I love that joy that she experienced. And I love that that joy had to do with her own self actuation. Like, I discovered this. Someone didn't show me something interesting, but I found something that, I did this. And that it also made her look closely at art, which is what we're always trying to get people to do. Slow down. Don't walk by everything. Take a moment, look closely, discover something. So that was like an example of one of those the beautiful
Roses.
blossom in the bouquet.
Yeah.
mhm. Mhm. I think there's a lot of joy in our work, and to know that we are inspiring joy or we are having that positive impact. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, in some bouquets, we have our buds that are not yet bloomed, but something you will look forward to in the future. Could you share what your buds are?
Hmm.
Mm,
What's in the future? We're right now in the middle of several projects in the museum, um, building type projects. So, looking forward to getting through those. I feel like, when there's building going on, it interrupts everything. It presents challenges that you have to work around. So I think this is, going to blossom. We'll have a little bit of new space for exhibitions, and things will open up again, and we'll be able to do a bit more than we're doing right now. So we've just, we need to be watered, get through this project, and we'll be able to do our sort of full programs that we're just slightly
mm-hmm.
pulled back on right now.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Wow. Well, beautiful bouquet. Very happy to hear about
Yes.
it.
And thus, this concludes the end of this episode of Now What? Before we go, Eric, Paige, do you have like any socials that you want to shout out before we conclude the episode?
Yeah, absolutely. Chelsea and Yashreen, really fun to talk with you. Loved your questions that you asked us and the conversation we had. Um, High school students, you are in class until 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon or something. You can't even get to the museum because we close at 5 o'clock, except on Thursdays. Thursday night, we're open till 9 p.m. every night. Pay attention to this
Wow.
because there's details. The second Thursday of every single month is museum nights. We're open till 9 still, but there's performances, there's art making activities, there's tours, there's food, there's three, four, five, 800 people in a social, vibrant art experience event. So come to the second Thursday of every single month at the museum. It's free. Um, Socials, well, the website is Harn, HARN.UFL.edu. And for anything more social than that, I'm going to have to kick over to Paige for like Instagram.
Yes, we are active on Instagram and Facebook, just Harn Museum of Art, but we'll post all of our details about our programs with that invitation to come and attend for free, and always fun.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you guys for sharing. I have to check it out myself. I'm very
Yeah, please come.
intrigued.
Say hi. We'll be here almost every, at the evening. So ask for us, track us down, and introduce yourselves in person. We'll see how tall we all really are.
Yeah, or short.
For sure.
Well, bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you for
Bye,
joining.
everyone.